Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the official podcast of the number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox farm system on the web. This is the SoxProspects.com podcast. It's 2018, and it's episode number 133. Happy New Year, everybody. My name is Chris Hatfield. I am the executive editor of SoxProspects.com, and I'm coming to you from the slowly thawing Sox Prospects Mid-Atlantic offices here in our nation's capital. Joining me, as always, on the lap is Firefly the Cat, and on the horn is our director of scouting, Ian Kundle. Ian, what's going on, man? Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and after, we'll call it a sabbatical for the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably explain it a little bit. Part of it is that is work and travel, and part of it...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you were...
I was gone for 3 weeks.
You were gone. You were in the jolly old.
I was in the United Kingdom.
You were. With the Dowager Countess of Grantham.
I will only wish. It wasn't that exciting, but maybe next year. But yeah, so I was away, and then you've been very busy, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yes, work's
there's
been
also
insane.
Another thing, which is
nothing's happening. Nothing is happening at all.
Like, not just with the Red Sox, all of baseball.
Oh, it sucks. It really...
Like, I knew it was bad yesterday when Randall Grichuk got traded, and people were like, ooh, a move, let's go. And I was like, oh, dear. Didn't he get demoted last year after hitting, like, 220?
He got demoted. Well, I think it was like he's with the Cards, right?
You know he got traded to the
right.
Blue Jays.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, but I'm saying he was with the Cards.
Oh, yeah.
And he was on there. I mean, they do that. They, send the guys down for a week to, think about what they've done.
Yeah.
When they would, most teams would just bench a guy for a week.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know. This is a little sidetrack.
No, let's get into it. It's interesting.
Did you read the Jeff Passan article?
Which one? The recent one? No.
The recent one.
There was one at the beginning of this slow season when Ohtani still hadn't signed yet and Stanton still hadn't been traded yet.
No, it was not that one. It was this one was basically pointing out the hypocrisy of everyone who said that it was, we're waiting for Stanton and Ohtani to sign and then things will start happening. And basically that, he quoted one prominent free agent as, he didn't give a name, but as saying that they were more than happy to sit out till the All-Star break.
Yeah.
And it's like, that just shows that I think the owners and the teams are starting to be a lot more careful with the money. And, I mean, we're seeing it this year with, the Yankees getting under the competitive balance tax. The Dodgers are, so they reset for next year's spending spree. Mm-hmm. But we're seeing the impact this year where nobody's signing. And it's interesting.
And, it's funny, on our forum, which, I, of course, encourage everybody to check out at forum.soxprospects.com. And, there were people on there speculating this is Scott Boris's fault. And it's like, no, it's not Scott Boris's fault. No one has signed.
Yeah.
Nobody. The only top guy who's signed who isn't a relief pitcher is Carlos Santana.
Yeah.
Because he got a stupid contract from the Phillies.
Yeah, that was insane. He got as much as Edwin Encarnacion got last year. Didn't he get the exact same contract? 360?
360. Or 360, yeah. And
Which
it's of course, and it kind of looking into it too, it seems like it's Santana signing and relief pitchers.
Yeah.
But really, funny we're getting into this before all the intro stuff, but hey, let's do it. If you look at who's signed, you've got the Rockies have signed a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
The Cubs have signed a few guys. They went and got Tyler Chatwood.
Because didn't the Rockies sign Wade Davis, right?
Yes. Well, they signed Wade Davis and two other pitchers, too. They re-signed Jake McGee, I think. Oh, no. Hold on. They signed Wade Davis. Free agent tracker. Okay. Yeah. They've spent... Yeah, they've basically spent all of their money on relief pitching. So they went and got... how can I sort by dollars? Here we go. Yeah. So they signed Wade Davis, Jake McGee, and Brian Shaw.
Brian Shaw was the other one, yeah.
Yeah. And they re-signed McGee, even though they already had Ottavino and who else coming back? One more. The former Marlins guy. Why can't I think of his name? Anyway, they've got a bunch of money tied up in their bullpen now. But it's like them... You've got the Phillies signed Carlos Santana and Tommy Hunter. So they're making moves. The Cubs signed Tyler Chatwood and Brandon Morrow. And you've got the Twins signed Fernando Rodney and Addison Reed. And it's basically like those are the teams that are willing to go spend money. And then the Angels went and got Zach Cozart after they won the lottery and got Ohtani.
Yeah, and they needed a third baseman badly.
They needed a third baseman, and it's like that's a shrewd move. I mean,
it's a good contract too.
Nothing is getting through the left side of that infield now.
And that's a good contract, $338.
Yes.
I'll happily take that.
Yeah. Yeah,
and Jay Bruce too. That was the other one.
Well, Jay Bruce signing with the Mets, right? So you're clearly on the ESPN one and sorted by dollars.
No, I'm on the MLB Trade Rumors one.
Okay, all right. But yeah, and I mean, other than that, it's been small moves. It's been the Indians signing Yonder Alonso to replace Santana. Okay, great.
Yeah.
On the Phillies signed Pat Neshek too.
Yeah. I think that was re-signed. But if you look, it
wasn't.
Years.
He had gone elsewhere and came back.
Oh, right. If you look, though, years, too, like the only free agent who's got more than 3 years is Justin Upton, who wasn't a free agent, I guess.
He was traded. Technically. Yeah. He re-signed before hitting free agency.
Exactly.
So that's why he's not in some of the trackers. But yeah. Yeah, I should have mentioned him with the Angels, too. So it's like there's basically 4 teams spending money right now.
Yeah.
And the rest of the teams are just kind of dropping, 2-year deals here and there. But the 3-year deals, if you go down the list, it's Phillies, Rockies, Mets, Cubs, Angels, Rangers with Mike Minor signing him to be a starter. Have fun with that. And then Rockies. That's it. Those are the only 3-year deals. So it's just, no one is signing anyone. And I think, I was reading, you're talking about, good reading recently. Apparently the MLB, the players are getting a little unhappy with Tony Clark, which I would say about freaking time.
I mean,
because the CBAs, the last 2 CBAs have been so owner friendly.
Yeah, like this one I was reading, I think it was the Passion article which talked about it, that they basically traded leverage when it came to contracts in return for like extra seats on the bus. And
amenities, seats on the bus, days off.
Yeah, and
10
it's
days off. Good for you.
So they're trading, and that's, I guess, but the point the article made was, one of them was that's what happens when you're, in the past they had a lawyer or, an economist or someone with that kind of background running the players union. And now it's an ex-player. Mm-hmm. And so the ex-player is obviously going to hear the player's concerns, which is a lot of amenity based. It's not necessarily, it's not necessarily looking at the bigger picture and, what is best for the contracts that these players are going to get. Mm-hmm. And they've created a system where, the trade-offs they're making are not ones that lend themselves to getting good contracts, with the tax systems and the giving up the draft picks and all that stuff. It just, it's kind of created the situation where we're in, where teams don't want to spend money and they know they don't have to because no one else is spending money.
Right.
So,
yeah. And actually I didn't realize on ESPN you can sort by team spending.
Oh yeah. And,
so the top at the top is Colorado, $114.5 million. 2 is Philadelphia with $94.25 million. The Cubs have spent $89 million. The Twins have spent $71.75 million. The Mets at $53 million, and then it just starts going down really quick. The Angels, it says $40 million, but you have to add Upton and Ohtani. They're not. Well, I guess Ohtani doesn't cost a lot, but he's going to. And then, I mean, there are 5 teams that haven't signed a free agent.
I think the Orioles are one of them, right?
Pittsburgh, Miami, Tampa, Baltimore, and Atlanta. Yeah. And I mean, and the thing is, teams are making trades, so it's not like they're sitting still. They're waiting. Well, but they're waiting out the free agents, and I think there's no doubt in my mind we're going to have a labor stoppage in 20. What would it be? 20?
I think it's 2020. Yeah.
2021, I think, would probably be the season because the new CBA is 2017 through 2020.
Yeah, it was 5 years. Or no, it was
4 years.
4 years, yeah.
Yeah, but no, because I think it was in effect last year, so I think it's 16 through 19, so it probably is 2020. Yeah, it's just, it's not going to be good, but it's probably going to be necessary. And I think, it really comes down to, all right, if you want to stop giving players money as free agents, you need to start giving the players under team control more money. I've always thought it's insane that in the first 3 years of a career, a player is basically forced to take whatever the team's going to pay him.
Yeah,
and it can basically be the league minimum. Like it's
Well, especially, too, with how the baseball, I mean, obviously we know about all the minor league lawsuits, and we've talked about them on here before, that a lot of these guys, guys like Ohtani are the exception, they're not getting paid anything, really, except for their signing bonus until they make the big leagues, which can be anywhere from, 2 to 4, 5, 6, 7 years, depending on the guy.
Yep.
And so you're making nothing in the minors, so you're living off your bonus, and then the first 3 years, I mean, obviously they're making way more than most people in the country or in the world. But still, in baseball layman terms, they're making, what, 500,000 to $1 million, depending the first 3 years.
The under $1 million. I don't think anybody gets $1 million.
I think the record is I want to say Chris Bryant or someone got just over $1 million, or maybe Trout or someone for their first.
It's probably Bryant, because Bryant also just set the first year arbitration record.
But yeah, so for the first basically anywhere from 5 to 10 years of a player's career, they're making not that much. Especially when you parse it out like that. Let's say they get, $750,000 a year in the 3 years in the majors. You're looking at, plus the minor league, which is pennies. You're looking at $2.5 million for 10 years or whatever.
Right. Which is obviously a lot, but at the same time, when there's a guy on your team making $30 million for 1 year, who might only be marginally better than you, or in some cases may not be better than you. See, for example, compare David Price, who's a very good player, but is probably the 5th best player on the Red Sox.
Yeah.
So
well, and that's why I think bringing it back to the Red Sox, I think this all goes back to they severely misjudged the year they signed Sandoval and Ramirez. They severely misjudged where the CBA negotiations were going and how money was going to be spent going forward.
Probably.
And kind of we're seeing the impact of that is that they're in a standoff with JD Martinez, who, I mean, as we discussed, this should be their number one and clearly is their number one target and someone they badly need.
And should have signed in November in another year.
But they're trying to keep the salary as low as possible because they've got bad contracts on their books. They're paying David Price $30 million this year, and you see guys like Jake Arrieta, Yu Darvish are sitting out there unsigned.
Well, how about paying Pablo Sandoval this year?
I was going to get there, yeah. But then it's like Rick Porcello, $21 million. Hanley Ramirez, $22 million. Pablo Sandoval, I don't know what is he getting, $20 million to not play?
Basically.
And it's not like, in other sports where you can trade that dead contracts, dead money, like the Bruins did with Mark Savard back in the day, and then insurance covers it to get it off your cap. You can't do that in baseball. They're stuck with that contract. And so, it's just we're seeing the impact of that now.
Well, okay, so Pablo's getting 19 this year.
Yeah.
And next. Oh, God.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
And then a $5 million buyout.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it just, that whole situation with the contracts they have on the books gets exacerbated when you look, and going forward, there's not a lot of talent in the high minors coming to fill those holes. The guys that you need at the minimum salaries to balance that out. Obviously, you have Devers is up already. But other than that, you've got Chavis coming, maybe, position player-wise, and pitcher-wise, there's no one who's going to be an impact guy. So they're in a difficult situation, and we're seeing the American League is getting ultra-competitive. Specifically, the Astros are loading up. I mean, they went out and got Garrett Cole. The Yankees got Stanton. It's not a great look for the Red Sox when they're kind of just sitting there, especially since both those teams also have significantly better farm systems, both potentially to help their own team or as trade chips going forward, whereas the Red Sox have kind of already played their hand with all that.
Well, I wouldn't go all doom and gloom yet. I think the AL East is stratifying, and I think you've got a very clear top two once again in the Yankees and Red Sox. I'm not worried about the Rays, Orioles, or Blue Jays at this point, whereas the past few years it's been – I mean, I don't know if it was last year or the year before. I remember entering the year saying the AL East from 1 to 5 could finish in any order, and I would not be surprised, honestly. I mean, but now it's just, the Orioles window looks like it's closing. The Blue Jays window has clearly closed, and the Rays window is basically, for the most part, closed.
I mean, they traded Longoria. I mean, and Cobb's a free agent. And,
they probably need to move Archer.
Exactly. He's their only really – trying to think, marquee guy.
And they've got guys close, so they might, come up in another couple of years. But, they also, it's what's the point while your stadium sucks?
Yeah, and you're in St. Petersburg.
I'm not going to repeat that.
Those were my words for the record for anyone listening.
Well, let's do the intro. Now that we're 15 minutes in,
that's a good discussion though.
Yeah, one way you can support this podcast is to subscribe and give us a rating and a review. It really helps us. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, We're on Google Play Music and we're on YouTube. Subscribe so you know when a new episode is up. Give us a 4 or 5 star rating and a nice review. Help us get in some new ears. You can also support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. You can see the rewards there that you get for helping to support the podcast by pledging a dollar amount per episode. Our levels are $1, $2, and $5 per episode. And as we do each show, we want to thank our $5 level contributors. That'd be Sox Signatures, Lindell Martin, Kirby Miller, Gerardo Ian Tosca, Kyle Costigan, Tyler Woodrow, Jeff Trainer, David Nardone, Tim Harding, Hurricanes 1, Bill Stanton, Deb Kendall, and Evan Kirkwood. Thank you to them and all of our contributors on Patreon. We also love getting your emails, so send those into podcast@soxprospects.com. We know it's been a slow off-season, but hey, maybe there's something that you're dying to know about, so make sure you shoot us an email. If we don't talk about something that you want to hear about, tell us what you want to hear about. Ask us your questions. Tell us your concerns. Send us your thoughts. Again, it's podcast@soxprospects.com. You can also follow the site on Twitter @SoxProspects. I'm @SPChrisHatfield, and Ian is @Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. We also should mention, Ian, I just realized we should probably mention this. We're hiring, folks. If you've ever thought about joining the Sox Prospects team, now is the time to do so. We're hiring for, where's the site news tab? We are hiring for 2 positions. We're looking for a contributing editor and a social media specialist. The contributing editor position, it's really more of an editor/writer. We're looking for someone with
jack of all trades.
Yeah. So what we're hoping is that this person will edit a couple of editions of the Cup of Coffee per week, and we'll write a couple of editions of the Cup of Coffee per week. That's our daily recap of the previous night's games. And we'll also do some editing of other columns and features. We're looking for someone with prior collegiate or professional writing or editing experience. We want someone who's not going to require too much hand-holding. Are you a go-getter? Are you a self-starter? We're looking for you. The details are on news.soxprospects.com. And also, I tweeted it recently. I'll probably link it in the description on the news page for this podcast as well.
And I would say for that position as well,
sure.
It's a really good starting point if you're like you write for your college newspaper, if you're a college student or something. You know, we've had a couple guys who've started in similar roles or started as writers, go on and now be writers for MLB teams. So if you're kind of looking for a way to get some content out there and contribute to the sports journalism side of the equation, it's a great opportunity. So definitely send us an email or reach out to us through whatever the news page says.
For sure. And I don't know if it says it on there, but typically we want 18 years or older, just because nothing against those of you who are younger, but we just, if you're interested in writing when you're younger, write for if your high school's got a paper, do something like that. But it's just tough time-wise with high school students. Concentrate on the grades, get the grades up, get into a good school. And then as for the social media specialist position, it's what it sounds like. You're in charge of managing the Sox Prospects Twitter account, coordinating our strategy for other social media platforms. Facebook, we're on as well, a couple other places. But it would also be in charge with helping update some of the web updates on the website, just some kind of quick daily sort of updates that happen. So it's not really a kind of a social media thing, but also hoping someone could help out with that, but we're willing to train you on that. So if you're interested, again, need to be comfortable with social media platforms, maybe a couple times a day, including business hours. Don't need to be on call around the clock, but if you're unavailable to post during the entire workday, it's not going to work. So we need you to be available during the workday. The stats entry, that's once a day, a couple days a week. So again, check that out, news.soxprospects.com. And hey, if you start there and maybe prove yourself and want to maybe try a hand at something else at the website, move on to some other things in addition to those duties, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. There's other opportunities that could become available if you prove yourself. So, we've got staff that's gone on to such prestigious outlets as the Baltimore Sun, the Miami Sun Sentinel, MLB.com, Baseball Prospectus, ESPN.com. So we've got people who've been everywhere, man. So do us a favor, send us a resume. I think we want those in by January 26th, so you've got about a week left, and we've got some applications in, so get those in soon. Ian, I think that's everything, so we might as well get into news.
Yes,
shall we?
Let's do it.
Other than the fact that there is no news, Some minor news, I guess. I hadn't listed this first, but I guess the one that people might care about more than anything else in terms of player movement. Henry Owens is gone. Henry Owens got claimed off waivers by the Diamondbacks, who then placed him on waivers, and he was claimed by the Los Angeles Dodgers, where he is currently, I presume, still on their 40-man, because I haven't read anything about him getting outrighted.
Yeah, and he'll be on the Cubs probably in a couple months, and then eventually we'll end up on the Orioles, because that's just how it'll work.
Pretty much.
But, the end of the Henry Owens era, we hardly knew you at the major league level.
Yeah, I mean, drafted in 2011, so he's a guy who's been in our lives for 7 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about.
He was part of the Bradley draft, right? Yep.
Yeah, that was the Barnes, Swihart, Bradley, Owens first round, which you would never again have 4 first-round picks, and probably correctly so.
Yep, and then there was a good guy in the 5th round, though.
Oh, yeah, the right fielder there.
Yeah, and actually the 9th round.
Oh, right, yeah.
That was a really good draft.
That was a very good draft. Well, there was also a good draft overall, too, which helps.
Yeah, but so Henry Owens.
Henry Owens, happy trails, my friend. As for those coming in...
I mean, we should probably briefly mention, you saw in the AFL, what he was doing is tough. It was kind of the last-ditch attempt.
We talked a little bit about it because he got DFA'd to make room for the guys they protected from the Rule 5
Oh, right.
draft.
That did happen before we recorded last time. But it's just, hopefully, we kind of talked about needing to change the scenery, so hopefully he can work things out for himself, because back when he was right, he was a solid pitcher, but
and he'll be back in
our levels.
Back in California is helpful. Where's the Dodgers AAA affiliate?
Oklahoma City.
Is it Oklahoma City?
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, I mean, when he's with the Dodgers, he'll be that close to home. He's a California boy. So I think that'll be helpful for him, too, hopefully. So best of luck to Henry Owens. As for signings, since we last talked, I'll just probably list them in, and then we can see if there's anyone worth talking about a little bit. I know there's at least one I want to mention briefly, but and there's one that you've seen. But the Red Sox have signed, obviously, Mitch Moreland to a major league deal. Looks like he's going to be the starting first baseman next year, or at least will be in a timeshare. So that's interesting to see how that'll work with Hanley Ramirez, who in our 2018 projection is now listed as a bench player. Although I don't think he's actually going to be a bench player, but we'll see how the playing time works out. But as for minor league deals, the Red Sox have had signed minor league deals with Mexican infielder Esteban Quiroz. They re-signed infielder Mike Olt, who spent last year with Portland. Infielder Conrad Gregor, who was signed out of the Indy Leagues midseason and was with Salem. They re-signed old friends. They re-signed catcher Dan Butler, who was in Pawtucket. And then they went and signed old friends who had been gone for a while in William Cuevas, a pitcher who would probably be in AAA, be depth there, and infielder Ivan DeJesus Jr., who, of course,
was part of a famous trade, right?
Well, he's been parts of 3 trades involving the Red Sox. He was first acquired in the Nick Punto trade with the Dodgers.
The famous Chris Hatfield trade, too.
The famous Chris Hatfield trade?
Because Adrian Gonzalez was never getting traded.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay, thanks for mentioning that. I appreciate it.
Sorry, I had to. I love that tweet so much.
Well, it wasn't even bad, except for the fact that Peter Gammons retweeted it.
I know, which is why it's so funny.
And then, of course, it's like, oh, man, Peter Gammons retweeted me back when he was still with ESPN. This was 2012. And then, 3 weeks later, was it even 3 weeks later?
That was
he gets traded. And
it was a few days later. That's my favorite tweet, I think, ever.
But anyway, that offseason, he got shipped to Pittsburgh.
He was in the Jason Bay deal, right?
No. Jason Bay was long before that.
Jason
Bay was from Manny.
He was in the Melanson deal.
It was Mark Melanson, Stolmy Pimentel, Ivan DeJesus, and Jerry Sands for Joel Hanrahan and Brock Holt. There's a trade.
Oh, my God. What a name. There's some great names in that trade.
So he was drafted. Let's go through Ivan DeJesus' whole history. He was drafted by the Dodgers in 2005. Was in the Dodgers system until 2012 when he was in the Punto deal, in which he, James Loney, and Alan Webster, as well as plus 2 players to be named later, who were Ruby De La Rosa and Jerry Sands, came to the Red Sox for Beckett, Crawford, Gonzalez, and Nick Punto. He got traded that offseason, as we just mentioned. He became a free agent after the 2013 season and signed with the Orioles. And during the 2014 season, he was traded with Jemile Weeks to the Red Sox for Michael Almanzar and Kelly Johnson. And, of course, Almanzar
Oh, my God, I forgot that trade.
And Almanzar had spent most of the season with the Orioles as a Rule 5 pick.
Yeah, Michael Almanzar. Oh, Tiger Death House. What a guy.
Tiger Death House.
Oh, my God. Ivan DeJesus might be my new favorite prospect. I have forgotten. He has been attached to so many great names.
Okay, that offseason, he hits free agency and signs with the Reds. He's with the Reds for 2 years.
And he got a cup of coffee with them.
Yep. Spent 2 years with the Reds, hits free agency, signs with the Brewers for a season, was a free agent this offseason, and now he's back with the Red Sox.
That's fantastic.
That's a lovely, lovely.
The 30 for 30 on Ivan DeJesus' career is going to be so good.
No, it's not. He's actually got a year and 99 days of service time, so good for him. But
do you know what would be actually kind of funny? It would be an Ivan DeJesus like family tree where we can just like track all the people he's been traded with and see who they've turned into.
6 degrees of Ivan DeJesus.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
There you go. But yeah, and I also didn't mention the Red Sox also signed catcher Oscar Hernandez, who he's got a weird history. You've seen him, Ian, but before we get into Oscar Hernandez, okay, let me just give a little bit of background.
Yeah, you should go background first.
So he's got a cup of coffee in the majors. He got signed by the Rays out of Venezuela he debuted in 2010, so probably got at age 16. So I guess that's his first season. He was born on July 9th of 2013, so he's still only 24. He's going to turn 25 during the season this year, and he's already a free agent. But was in the Rays system until he was picked in Rule 5 by the Diamondbacks in 2015 after having topped out in Low A. I thought it was High A. He was only in Low A with Bowling Green.
Bowling Green or whatever it is.
Yeah, with Bowling Green in the Midwest League. Went straight to the majors, and the Diamondbacks, I guess, found a way to keep him around because he got drafted in the 2014 Rule 5 draft and stayed in their system even though he didn't really get much playing time in the majors. He essentially didn't play in 2015, so I don't know whether he was injured or they just kept him on the...
He was hurt in 2015, yeah.
Okay. 2016, he did get more playing time, but they were able to get him down to the minors. So he must have hit the 90 days of active roster duty and split the year between High A Visalia in the California League and Mobile in Double A. And he spent last year in Double A with Arizona in Jackson in the Southern League. They switched their affiliate, hitting 196. He basically has his career Double A line is 196, 246, 361. But, Ian, you saw him in the New York Penn League in 2013 when he was age 19.
Yeah, it was a weird one because I saw him sign a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I know that name, and I looked back, and it was because of as you said, back in Hudson Valley, he came into Lowell, and I saw him, and I remember just I'll take notes on opposing players on occasion. He was one of the guys I wrote some stuff down on because he had an absolute cannon behind the plate, and looking through some articles and stuff, it seems that, the Diamondbacks took him because he's a catcher who can really pick it. And obviously that's how you get, Rule 5 when you're a 21-year-old who's never been above A ball.
Right.
So it's an interesting signing for me because if he can, as we've seen, kind of the bar for catchers is so low that if you can really pick it, that could be a very useful player, both in the minor league level as someone who can help work with the pitchers in AAA and be kind of a complement to Dan Butler, who was also re-signed, as you alluded to earlier, and maybe even Jake Romanski if he's still there. But also, if you do need like an emergency major league guy who can just catch the ball. He's kind of like a poor man's Christian Vasquez who can't hit. So you can't hit less than Christian Vasquez, but he can still pick it. So it was just an interesting signing to me because, it's more depth and he's kind of got some, like he was once a prospect. And I kind of like those moves like that, go out and get someone who has some, pedigree or in the past and see if you can kind of do a reclamation project and maybe teach him how to hit because obviously jumping from A ball to the majors and then missing most of the year and everything, it's not good for your development at the plate when you're a young guy like that. So, yeah, I liked it. I thought it was just an interesting move.
Yeah, it was an interesting move. I mean, he'll be roster depth and maybe this is the point to talk about the non-roster invites, because there's a few guys on that list who got non-roster invites. So the Red Sox announced the players getting non-roster invitations to spring training. Obviously, before people are like, oh, wait, why didn't this guy? If you're on the 40-man roster, you are in Major League Camp to start spring training. So we're not going to mention players like Sam Travis or Sue Lin, or I'm trying to think of some of the others that people might be wondering about. Chandler Shepard, Ben Taylor, Ty Buttrey, Jalen Beeks. They're all on the 40-man roster, so they're in camp. Hector Velasquez. But in the non-roster invitees, there's 4 catchers, which is more than usual. Dan Butler, who was one of those guys. Oscar Hernandez, Austin Rye, and Jake Romansky. Rye, probably the biggest surprise of the 16 non-roster invites for me, Ian.
Yeah,
it's interesting. He's you don't see guys who haven't played above high A get invited to camp very much. I think it's a comment on his defense, which I think has obviously has come along from when you saw him in Lowell and he basically couldn't catch, and we assumed it was because he was hurt.
Which I think he was, so you're right.
And so the defense clearly has improved for them to give him the invite. Jake Romansky gets the invitation after last year, missing out on what probably would have been an obvious one, but he was suspended for amphetamines, right?
Yeah.
So he was suspended and couldn't come last year. No Jordan Procession this year, which is interesting. When he got a NRI last year, so probably not a great thing for him. Infielders, DeJesus and Esteban Quiroz, who we'll probably talk about a little bit in a second, along with Michael Chavis and Chad De La Guerra getting invites. Love to see, dude, if you told me at this time last year Chad De La Guerra is going to get a non-roster invite next year, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
And I say that because I love to see this.
Yeah, he's done. I mean, he's really made himself he turned himself from, he signed for $5K as a 17th round pick back in, 2015? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's turned himself into a guy who could be potentially a utility player. Or a backup. So he's got a chance at a major league future. So good for him.
I wouldn't expect him to stick around camp very long just because on the 40-man roster, you have Brock Holt, Zue Lin, Devin Marrero, and Marco Hernandez. I
think the reason they're inviting all these infielders is Dustin Pedroia is obviously not going to be participating in spring training, and I'm not sure Hernandez will be healthy either. So
no, he's supposed to be healthy.
Oh, is he? Okay,
yeah,
I thought
he's supposed to be healthy
missing the first few weeks.
I think he's supposed to be healthy by now.
Okay.
I would hope so. I mean, if they're saying that he's the guy who's going to be the front runner for the Pedroia playing time to start the year, he better be healthy for spring training.
For sure.
And meanwhile, they're still pursuing Eduardo Nunez. Apparently, they're one of 8 teams in on Eduardo.
Oh, really?
Nunez. Yeah, is the recent
completely
news.
Forgot he was a free agent still.
Right. Well, that's because I've completely forgot that there are free agents.
And everyone's a free agent still, though. So that's
in the outfield, only 3. Jeremy Barfield, Rusney Castillo, and Anuri Tavares. No surprises there for me, Ian. Add them to the 4 on the 40-man, who are obviously Benintendi, Betts, and Bradley, along with Bryce Brentz. All of the B words there, along with Barfield, and 2 guys whose names don't begin with B, unfortunately. Good for Jeremy Barfield for working his way into an NRI. When he re-signed, it was pretty clear he was going to get an NRI based on how he played last year. So that's not surprising at all to me. But at the same time, 7 outfielders screams to me that they expect to sign another. Obviously, they hope it's going to be J.D. Martinez, but if it's not him, they're signing someone.
Yeah. And I think Castillo is it's such a tough one because we talked about before. If his contract was a normal contract, he would have a legitimate claim as a 4th outfielder for them.
Yeah,
but it's just the money doesn't work, as kind of what we talked about earlier.
Right.
So they can't risk adding him because once they add him again, I don't think they can take the money off.
They can't take the money off under the new CBA, exactly.
Yeah.
So they better be sure about it. But at any rate, that's the outfield. Again, probably J.D. Martinez. Worth mentioning, not surprising to me, but worth mentioning is no Danny Mars. I know
surprising to me.
We've gotten questions about him based on he had a pretty good year this past year in Portland, but it's just that it was a pretty good year, and he's not a strong defender.
He can't play center field.
Yeah, Kevin Thomas of the Portland Press-Herald mentioned to me on Twitter, I'd expect him to be a guy who gets called up to play in Major League games at the beginning of camp. maybe, but it's
no. I could see that.
Well, yes, but I also who I would expect to be at more is like Cole Sturgeon, who can go pick it at all three outfield positions, whereas Mars is basically a left fielder. Yeah, he's a left fielder with no power, and he's like an average fringy runner. I mean, hopefully he can work himself up to be like a tweener who can work his way into a bench spot, and I think he could easily have a major league future. But it's tough to project that with the season he had, even as good as it was. He's trending in the right direction, but he needs to continue trending. Mm-hmm. I would agree. Pitchers we haven't mentioned yet. There's 5: Justin Haley, Kyle Martin, Bobby Pointer, Fernando Rodriguez Jr., not to be confused with K-Rod. This is the other Fernando Rodriguez, and Marcus Walden. No surprises there at all for me, Ian. Bobby Pointer is another guy who I'd mention is like Chad De La Guerra in that it's really nice to see him get a non-roster invite. I was a little surprised Cuevas did not get one, given that he's a guy who's been up and down with the Tigers since leaving the Red Sox organization. Yeah, he made it with the Mariners, too, I want to say, right? Is that Cuevas, or are you thinking of Aro? I might be Aro. Let me see. I'm here typing. But I thought he was... with Cuevas, I'm just surprised because he signed recently. I'm just surprised there were no teams willing to give him an NR. Yeah, he was just the Pirates. You were right. I mean, not the Pirates, the Tigers. Yeah. Because I remember I asked Emily Walden, who does a great job covering their minor league system. I asked her on Twitter if she knew why he wasn't pitching in the Venezuelan league this offseason, because he has every year for a while now. And she didn't really know because he was a free agent. She hadn't really looked into it. But it was kind of weird to me that he hadn't. So those are the NRIs. Like I said, I think those are basically my thoughts on them. It's interesting. It doesn't mean a ton. For example, honestly, Chavis, I think, might be getting more time at first than at third, just based on the fact that they have all those guys that can play some third. His path to the majors right now is at first base in the near term. Just because of the way the Red Sox roster works, I think that they would give Hernandez, Holt, Barrero, and Lynn the shots ahead of him. Honestly, before they gave him a shot. He's not major league ready either. No, that's fine. If Chavis went back to, he's not going to most likely, but I wouldn't rule out him starting the year in Portland again. Chavis, yeah. He'll be fighting for a spot in Pawtucket. Yeah. Our current projections have him in Pawtucket, and I could see it. But at the same time, if they wanted to make him earn it and start him in Portland for a month, it's because that would be out of the ordinary. Even as good as he was last year, he did only hit 250 in Portland. We're not talking about someone who hit like how Devers was killing the ball there, or like how Betts or Benintendi hit when they were there. And there was the discussion on the forum about the chance when Chavis might see the major leagues this year, because someone asked if there was a chance he could break camp with the team, and that's none. And that's the discussion turned to, well, could he get a midseason call up? And I don't think he will. I think it's very unlikely. The most likely way would be if Moreland, Hanley, and Travis all fall apart at first base somehow, and he's raking. But someone said, Devers hadn't even played in Double-A last year, and he got called up in July. But keep in mind, Rafael Devers in Portland last year hit 300, 369, 575 with 18 bombs in 77 games, right? Chavis in 67 games in Double-A, hit 14 home runs, so similar, but hit 250, 310, 492. If you like OPS, that's an 802 OPS compared to Devers, who had a 944 OPS. They were on different levels entirely at the Double-A level. And they're different levels of prospects. Exactly. Chavis has nowhere near the ceiling of Devers. No, and that's not a knock on Chavis. No one in the system right now. Very few prospects in baseball have Devers' ceiling. Exactly. Chavis is a solid prospect, but he's not one I would rush, considering, especially when you look back, he's basically had one good year in the system. Yeah. He was fine after signing in the GCL, but Greenville his first year, he hit 233. Greenville his second year, he hit 244. And he's not played more than 109 games coming into, except for last year was the healthiest he'd been, and he still missed a decent amount of time last year, if I remember correctly. Well, at the beginning of the year, he was DHing a lot. Oh, that's what it was, because he was hurt for half of the first month, and then he DH'd for another month, it seemed, primarily. before he got onto the field. But that said, I mean, he also it's funny, Alex Spear in the Baseball America Red Sox list chat, which we'll be talking about the Baseball America list a little bit. I just realized I didn't give a roadmap up front, but whatever. People can read the description. Mentioned when talking about Sam Travis that some guys need AAA, right? The Red Sox have shown, because the question has something to do with the Red Sox have shown they're willing to call prospects up from AA. Might they do that, with guys or, whatever? And he said, some prospects need AAA. Travis is a guy that needs to figure out AAA. And Chavis is a guy that's going to need to figure out AAA, I think, just because of his approach. The hit tool needs to continue to improve and continue to play at each level of the system. He's not a guy that I'm comfortable calling straight up from AA, personally. I think he's going to need a decent number of at-bats. I would peg him for a September call-up, if anything. I'd be very surprised if he reached the majors before August. And if it's before September 1, it's because he's hitting 300 in AAA, which I would be very surprised by because he's not that kind of hitter. Yeah.
Especially too. I mean, I didn't even think about it, but if you add in his Arizona Fall League stats, which is probably, I would say the pitching level is similar to AA. In the Arizona Fall League, 261, 327, 478, which is more or less the same as his line in AA. And that was over another 92 at bats. Putting his total across the whole thing at almost 350 at bats. So yeah.
I'd be happy if he starts in AAA, and I'd be happy if they consider him for a September call-up. I think that's a positive development path for Chavis.
For sure. If he makes the big leagues at any point next year, that's a positive development for him. Because, I mean, and if he doesn't next year, I don't think it's the end of the world either.
Nope. No, I mean, think of it like a Jalen Beeks who probably could have come up, but it's like you're going to call a guy up in September just to sit there.
Yeah, and I don't think Chavis obviously isn't on the rule. He's not Rule 5 eligible until next December, so it could be a similar situation to Beeks where they don't need to add him until after the season. So if they can use this, if they need the spot for elsewhere, that's probably what they'll do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or if they don't need it and decide not to use it, but I won't get into the Brentz thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are the NRIs. We mentioned briefly Rule 5. Nobody from the Red Sox got picked in the Rule 5 draft.
Not that surprising.
Not surprising at all. That's kind of what I figured would happen. I'm looking up my tweets of the two guys. So the Red Sox selected two players in the minor league portion, in the AAA portion of the Rule 5 draft. And just to be clear, that doesn't mean these players will be in AAA. There's a AAA reserve list that's basically the AAA version of the 40-man roster. So if a guy is not on a team's AAA reserve list, you can select them and keep them on your AAA reserve list. And what that means is that if a player is going to play in your AAA level, they need to be on the AAA reserve list. Typically, players selected in the Rule 5 draft in that way aren't in AAA yet. So the Red Sox took two players. They took Andy Ferguson out of, I think, the Angels system. Ian, help me. And they took Luke Tendler, an outfielder.
Ferguson was the Royals.
Oh, the Royals. Okay, right. Yes, because I remember right. They took Ferguson. Let's see, Andy Ferguson. Okay.
Ferguson was Royals. Yes. Tendler was
right-handed pitcher out of the Royals system, and Luke Tendler's an outfielder out of the Texas system. Ferguson has reached AAA, but he's been injured for most of the past 2 years. He had re-signed with the Royals as a minor league free agent this offseason. If he's healthy, they'll put him in Pawtucket, but we don't really know what he needs in terms of rehab. I think we're kind of projecting him to probably start the year in extended spring training, would be my guess. But who knows, maybe he's ready to start at an A-ball level and work his way back up to AAA. I'd be very surprised if he's ready for AAA to start the year. As for Tendler, he spent last year in AA, and my expectation is he's probably going to be in Portland, given their thin outfield there, and Pawtucket's outfield already has Tavares, Castillo, and Barfield, who are the NRIs, probably Danny Mars, and maybe Cole Sturgeon. So it seems pretty clear that he's in the AA outfield. So not really a lot to write home about there. Interesting, it's the second year in a row the Red Sox made two minor league Rule 5 picks. Last year they took Harrison Cooney, who we talked a little bit about here, and left-hander Josh Smith.
Josh Smith.
Yeah, who is still around. I keep forgetting. He's probably going to be back in AA, although maybe he'll fight for a spot in AAA. So,
is Cooney still? He is, right?
Yeah, they're both still around. Yep. Yes, sir. So, that's the minor league Rule 5 draft. More happy trails, Ian. Some kind of Off-season cuts by the Red Sox came down in January. Tyler Spoon retired. He was drafted out of Alabama and had been trying to convert from an outfielder to a catcher. He retired in the offseason. The Red Sox also made some cuts. Infielder Mitch Gonsolus, who had spent most of last year in Greenville. Outfielder Brian Hudson, who I think spent most of last year in Salem. Outfielder Mike Myers, who spent most of last year in Salem. Infielder Steven Reveles, who was split between Greenville and Lowell, I believe. Infielder Jose Sermo, who spent last year in Salem. Pitcher Dakota Smith, who I think had been with Greenville, maybe Lowell. First baseman / emergency relief pitcher Tucker Tubbs got cut, much to the chagrin of our James Dunn, who had kind of adopted him as his token spirit animal. Tubbs was okay as a first baseman, but he had kind of made a name for himself among our staff last year by I think he threw like 12 scoreless innings or something crazy in either blowouts or super long extra inning games when he had no business doing so. Also getting cut were Lowell pitcher Ryan O'Duber and Lowell infielder Yomar Valentin, Valentin it seemed like they cut pretty quick, but I'm surprised. I thought he would have stuck around another year, but I think things are getting kind of crowded in the infield at those kind of A-ball, short season A levels with all the guys they have coming up from their international program. The Lozadas and who am I forgetting?
Curran Suarez.
Yeah, Suarez is of the world. So, those are the guys who got cut. Happy trails to those gentlemen. Anyone worth mentioning there, Ian?
I guess Valentin's probably the biggest name just because he was a draftee from last year, or no,
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
But he was never big enough. I mean, he was, 5'8", 145 we have him listed at. He just wasn't physical enough. And he just couldn't hit. So I'm not that surprised.
He hit 200 in Lowell last year as a 19-year-old Puerto Rican, son of Jose Valentin.
Yep.
Actually.
Correct.
2015 draftee, actually. Not 2016. He spent 2 years at the GCL, which was the first sign. But
not a great sign.
No.
And I think Hudson did not get money. I thought for some reason Brian Hudson got money, but he didn't. He could run. He just couldn't really hit. But nothing that surprising.
Yeah, Valentin actually got 130 as a 20th round pick.
It was just a lot of org depth guys that were unlikely to get out of the low minors as is the case.
And honestly, cutting those guys in January rather than waiting to cut them in spring training does them a favor because it gives them a chance to get into another camp. So I kind of like that. I think in the past the Red Sox have – I think they didn't really cut guys at this time of year. I think that's been more of a Dombrowski thing. But they would, let a few guys go at the end of the year, and then they would keep guys into spring training and make cuts more often during spring training. And I was you get why you want to have as much depth as possible for things like injuries, but at the same time, it's kind of lousy for those guys who, now they're trying to catch on with another team during spring training. So good luck to those guys. Other offseason news, let's see. The Red Sox reached deals with all of their arbitration players, but Mookie Betts, who's going to go to an arbitration hearing. Not the best situation in the world, Ian.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a little concerning that this is the second year in a row they're going to have a contentious contract situation with Betts. It's up whatever the offer sheet or whatever they call it.
Yeah, he didn't sign the offer sheet last year, yeah.
So, I mean, and obviously it doesn't mean anything not signing it, but this year now they're going to an arbitration hearing, and the idea of an arbitration hearing is it's so wild to me, where it's literally like you're telling a player to their face that they're not good enough to make a certain amount of money. Yeah,
the Red Sox filed at $7.5 million, and Betts' camp filed at $10.5.
I'll just say 7.5 sounds light given some of the other.
Does it though?
I mean, for first year ARB, what did Bryant get?
10. I mean, so basically, if
Betts is closer to 10 than 7.5.
But remember, he has to get one or the other. Right, there's no midpoint. You get either the 7.5 or the 10.5. Keep in mind, the things that arbitrators care about are so Bryant's got a Rookie of the Year and an MVP.
True. But Betts has 2 All-Star games.
Better numbers than Betts. The more I looked at it, at least 7.5 seemed to make more sense than 10.5.
It just seems like a little low. They could have, I don't know.
Well, keep in mind though, these are the numbers they filed at. This isn't the number they were necessarily negotiating at.
Sure.
So Chris Bryant set the record So Bryant set the record with agreeing to a $10.85 million contract for the season. So Betts would be getting just below Bryant. He wouldn't be setting a new record. Mm-hmm. But, if you look at the things that they care about things like awards. I mean, Betts isn't as much of a home run hitter. Yes, he steals bases, which Bryant doesn't do. And yes, he's a great defender. He's won Gold Gloves. But I don't know. It's tough. The Red Sox have taken a file and trial stance under Dombrowski, which means they don't continue to negotiate after the numbers have been filed. Which I don't know this, but to me, just thinking it through, the reasoning for that is that you want to sign the contract before you have to file a number because you don't want the number you're filing to affect negotiations. So it kind of allows you to file at a higher number, not worrying about where you're having to game the halfway point between you and the player, would seem to be my guess.
Mm-hmm. But Betts did finish second in the MVP. I mean,
sure, yeah.
He's I don't know.
Horseshoes and hand grenades, my friend.
Yeah, it's obviously he had somewhat of a down year compared to his rookie year last year, I guess his rookie year. No, it wasn't his rookie year. And compared to his the 2016 year. Mm-hmm. But still, I don't know, 2 years in a row of contentious contract negotiations, and obviously it's pretty clear he's not going to do an extension to buy out the ARB years. So we'll see him. He's got, 2 more years or 1 more year after this?
2 more.
Well, 27, this year and then the year after. That's what I mean.
Huh?
He's got this year and then 1 more after it.
No.
Because that's 6 years, right? Or is it 2 more
this
after?
This is his first year of arbitration.
This is ARB1. Yeah, you're right. I'm misreading his BREF page. You're right.
Yeah, no, so this is ARB1, so he'll have ARB2 and ARB3.
You're right. Yeah, so, yeah. We shall see.
Yeah. Yeah, not a great situation. Speaking of not great situations, one that we're probably just mention and move along. Stephen Wright got arrested for a domestic dispute during the offseason that's being investigated. I guess the case got retired, which I'm an attorney and I don't know what that means. I guess it basically means that it's it's kind of like a non-prosecution agreement or something to that effect. My guess is there will be some kind of short suspension, but who knows? MLB's domestic violence policy now basically almost mandates if there's an arrest, there has to be a suspension. So we'll see what they come out with. It's kind of tough with a pitcher because it's like, if you're pitching every fifth, is he a reliever? Is he a starter? Who don't know? We'll hear what happens there. So that's probably going to play into their plans depth-wise as far as Wright goes. But that's about it. I mean, I guess injury news. Apparently, Wright is expected to be ready for the beginning of the season. Eduardo Rodriguez is expected to be major league ready for mid-April. So I guess that means he would start the year on a rehab assignment. So he's close-ish in that sense, but we'll see. I think that's everything, Ian. Is that everything in terms of news?
Yes, I would say so. We just did a very good job making no news into a very long recording.
Well, there's also that's only 2 months of news.
That's true.
So
that's true. We're catching up.
We're catching up. The other thing we wanted to talk about is what I guess I will call outside Red Sox prospect rankings. Publications.
Ranking season.
It is ranking season. So we've got a couple of lists in, those from Baseball America and from Baseball Prospectus. We wanted to mention those. So just mention briefly, go over them, compare them with ours. Any notes we have, any thoughts we have. Baseball America's is, of course, done by Alex Spear, who submits and discusses his rankings with the staff at BA, who I think obviously have input. I don't think he has carte blanche. So there's those rankings, and then the BP rankings are done by their prospect team, headed by Jeffrey Pasternostro and their staff. Those came out January 10th. The BA rankings came out way back on December the 18th. Their top 10, and of course their top 30 will be in the prospect handbook, which we can probably talk about when that comes in. Of course, placed in my order, and would recommend everybody do that. It's a great resource. Second only to the SoxProspects.com website. Anyway, the big picture here, which I think we've talked about before, Ian, and I think is backed up by both of these rankings. If you look at them, comparing them side by side with the Sox prospects rankings, it seems pretty clear. Well, that seems pretty clear. There's a clear number one. There's a clear number two. Oh, bye, as the cat jumps off of my crotch. There's a clear number one. There's a clear number two. There's a clear tier that includes 2 players at 3 and 4. And then after that, it's just shenanigans.
It's a hot mess.
It's a hot mess. The 3 publications, including us, we have 3 different people at 6. We have 3 different people at 7. We have 2 people at 8, randomly, 2 people at 9, 2 people at 10. Oh, no. Hold on. 5. Sorry. 3 at 5, 3 at 6, 2 at 7, 2 at 8, 2 at 9, and 3 at 10, including one that BA ranks and we don't.
We don't rank him, though. But it was a conscious choice. It wasn't like
and we might as well just say that. So Marco Hernandez, Baseball America ranks him because he technically has not exhausted his. I guess they don't worry about service time in their rankings.
Yeah, correct.
They just worry about at bats and games games played and
because he only has
pitched.
109 at bats.
Meanwhile, if you use service time, Marco Hernandez spent the entire 2017 season on the Major League roster because he was on the 60-day DL.
Correct.
For almost all of it. So, anyway, our rankings, just to remind all of you. So, obviously, everyone agrees Jay Groom is the number 1 prospect in the system. Everyone agrees Michael Chavis is the number 2 prospect in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone agrees that, in some order, right-hander Brian Mata and right-hander Tanner Houck are 3 and 4 in the system.
Correct.
After that, pretty much nobody agrees on anything. And I'm looking forward to see MLB.com's list and seeing Fangraph's list.
And Keith Law's list, too.
And Keith Law's list, yeah. There's more lists coming. We'll mention BA and BP here. MLB Pipeline has started releasing their position lists. They've released 4 of the 8, and there are no Red Sox on their top 10 right-handers, left-handers, catchers, or first baseman. So nobody there. But for these 3 Red Sox lists, there's some surprises on there. I'll mention briefly, we had Daniel Flores at number 5, and I'm sure he would have been a consensus top 5 guy as well. Because it's funny, we were talking earlier, the Sox prospects lists, we go from 5 to 10. Sam Travis, first baseman Sam Travis at 5, first baseman Josh Ockamy at 6, center fielder Cole Brandon at 7, right-hander Mike Schwarin at 8, right-hander Alex Scherf at 9, and left-hander Jalen Beeks at 10. And you and I were both like, man, Sam Travis at 5, that looks really wrong. Did we really have that? And we realized we had him at 6 before Daniel Flores passed. It looks wrong, but then I think about it and it's like, I don't like anybody else at 5 either. Yeah.
I had a couple. I had Josh Ockamy ahead of him, but it's
who did I have
tough
personally?
After that.
I personally, when we did our rankings, I had Travis there.
Yeah.
I had Travis followed by Ockamy, Schwarin, Brandon, Scherf, and Beeks, which I guess I wound up being pretty close to what we wound up with. You went Ockamy, Travis, Brandon, Beeks, Schwarin, Scherf.
It's the same names.
It's the same names that were in our top 10.
Yeah.
I think we actually all agreed on the same top 10.
Yeah, we all had the same names.
We had the same names in different orders. But at the same time, I think that's just by chance. It's a weird way to put it.
Yeah.
But it's just, if you look at SoxProspects.com's front page, when we do our list, we include grades. And you need to look at grades at publications that do grades because not every number 1 prospect in a system is the same. Not every number 5, not every number 10. We have Jay Groom as the only 5.5 projection player, 5 at roll 5.5. We have 3 5s after that in Chavis, Mata, and Houck, and I think we all kind of agree Chavis is ahead of the other 2, even if they've got the same ranking or rating. And then after that, you start the 4.5s, and the 4.5s only go down to 14. And then after that, you've got
I would agree.
A whole bunch of 4s.
I was going to say that you could make a case for anyone from Travis down to Darwinzon and Hernandez in our list for the spots from 5 to 10, I would say.
And it's funny you mentioned that. In the business, we call that a transition because there's a couple surprises on these lists. The first I wanted to talk about briefly, Ian, is Baseball America's list. They have Darwinzon and Hernandez at 6. I like it. It's aggressive as hell, but the more I think about it, it's not. So just to give you Alex's list over at BA, it's got the same top 4. He's got Cole Brannon at 5. He's got lefty Darwinzon Hernandez at 6, followed by Travis, Schwarr, and Scherf, and at number 10, Marco Hernandez, who we don't rank. Darwinzon Hernandez, if you look at what Alex wrote about him, it starts to make some sense. He mentioned things that we've talked about with him in the past. 3/4 arm slot, 93 to 96, topping out at 97 with the fastball. Primary breaking pitch has been a curveball, and I think you've even said this, Ian, the arm slot seems suited to a slider.
Yeah, because it's a 3/4 lowish arm slot.
Yeah.
So.
Has used sparingly before, but Alex points out in his last start of the year, he leaned heavily on the slider in a dominant performance. If he's got a above average even Ian slider, that ranking makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Because he's a lefty who throws mid to high 90s and
that's a late inning pitcher if he can figure out the control and command, obviously, because he walked 49 in 103 innings, which and that's the thing with all of these guys. There's positives. Josh Ockamy had a 385 on base percentage this year, right? That's great. He also struck out a lot and only hit 14 home runs for a guy who has a lot of power.
Yeah.
He struck out 143 times.
Every one of these guys has a severely limiting thing.
Yeah, there's
They're missing something, which is keeping them from that next level.
Exactly. So it's tough. That's why it's tough to rank those guys. And you just have to kind of pick, based on any number of factors. If Darwinzon Hernandez has a second above average pitch, I get him at 6. Sure. That makes some sense to me.
Yeah, he had a really good year with Greenville this year. I mean, he struck out 116 guys in 103 innings, and he gave up 85 hits. He's very difficult to hit when he's on, and when he's throwing strikes. It's just
21
he doesn't
years
always throw strikes.
Yeah. He's going to be a very interesting Rule 5 protect question next year. If he spends the entire year in Salem, as I would suspect he might.
He's getting protected.
You think?
Yeah.
I guess you have to.
The Padres took 2 guys from last year who were in low A just because they throw really hard and had some potential. You can hide him in a bullpen, especially because he's a lefty. It makes it a lot easier.
That's true. Yeah, you could hide him I just worry about the damage to the progression, but at the same time, that's not their problem.
If they protect him, it's not their problem. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So that's interesting. But the other kind of surprising ranking, looking at BP's list, they have the same top 4. Ockamy at 5, fine, followed by Mike Schwarren, Cole Brannon, Alex Scherf. They have Sam Travis at 10, and at 9, center fielder Lorenzo Cedrola, Ian. I don't like it. If you look at their write-up, what they write about Cedrola, they talk about I'll say the first sentence of his write-up, Cedrola is a plus runner with a plus arm who projects as a plus defender in center field. We agree plus runner. We said that in our write-up of him from spring training. That's absolutely true. You had him at 4.2 coming out of the right side of the box. Mm-hmm. That's 60 speed. Don't agree with plus arm, right?
No. I think it's a fringy arm, maybe average at best. And that's from seeing him in spring training last year, so maybe he got stronger in the season, but
maybe.
He's so small too. This is the other thing. They list him at 5'11", 170. He is not 5'11" or 170 pounds. He's probably 5'9", 150.
Yeah.
My concerns stem from, I agree with the defense, so he's a very good defender. But I just don't think he can hit at all in the upper minors. And he had 4 home runs this year. There's no over the fence power. The OBP is fringy. He had 11 walks in 354 at bats this year. He ended the season injured, as I didn't even realize. But Alex Fear pointed out in his chat when asked about Cedrola that he missed the end of the year with sounds like a somewhat severe ankle injury. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so if that's going to limit, how is that going to impact his speed going forward? We don't know. And it just, I don't know. I was trying to think of a way to an argument for him in the top 10, and I couldn't come up with one. He's a 20-year-old undersized guy with no power, below average on base skills. I mean, he's got decent contact skills, but it's not like he steals bases at a great clip either. I mean, he's a plus runner, yes, but I don't think his instincts are very good on the bases. He only had 19 stolen bases in Greenville. And when you think about it, we've seen guys like Garen Cecchini, who was a below average runner, stole 50 bases in Greenville before?
Right.
If you're a plus runner, you should be stealing 30, 40 bases in Greenville easily. I'm pretty sure Danny Mars is another example of that, of someone who.
Well, look at Greenville this year in their stolen base totals. Tyler Hill stole 42 bases.
Exactly. Tyler Hill's an average runner at best.
Cedrola was third on the team with 19 stolen bases. Santiago Espinal stole 20. That's it. I mean, Cedrola only played 92 games.
That's true.
But does the body hold up over a full major league season?
That's the other thing. And we were talking about it kind of earlier. Like, profile-wise, he's pretty similar to someone like Chashuan Lin, who was.
But Lin was more athletic and bigger.
That's what I was about to say. Lin was more physical.
Sorry.
Lin was more physical, had a better arm. Lin had like a 70 arm, and
he might have had an 80 arm.
His arm, he had a cannon, and he was an easy plus defender as well. And we saw him. He got up to the big leagues, and the pitchers just knocked the bat out of his hands.
Yep.
And I think he ended up getting a very brief cup of coffee. I'm trying to bring up his stats right now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at guys like last year, Tate Matheny in 2016 stole 21 bases. In 2015, Yohan Moncada stole 49 bases, but Moncada's Joseph Monje stole 22 bases.
Yeah.
Dubon and Hudson stole 18, and they're plus runners.
But yeah, the Cecchini's the one that always stands out to me because he had 50 plus steals there.
Yeah, but he he probably had 70 great instincts for the level.
Yeah, his instincts were great. Yeah, Chashuan Lin played 9 games in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And let's look at his batting. There's his minors. Where's minor stats? There it is. And in the minors, here's the point of reference. When he was in Greenville, he hit 249, 342, 359, which is the average is lower, but it's similar average OBP split and similar slugging. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he kind of moved up the levels and he got up to AA and it had a year where he was 277, 386 OBP. I don't think Cedrola has that type of on base skills. So I think he's the ceiling for me is a bench outfielder, which is a 40 player.
Yeah. I mean, they have the likely projection as a 40 and they have overall future projection. So his ceiling is a 50.
Yeah, I don't see that ceiling.
I don't see it either. I just don't.
He
doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to even get it. I don't even know if he gets a cup.
Because I would say if you gave me, here was the options. He's an average regular. He turns into Darnell McDonald, who's a bench utility guy, or he's an emergency up and down player, someone kind of like what Devin Moreira's turned into. I would say the latter is by far the most likely. It would be 70% that, maybe, or 80% that, maybe 10, 15% chance he's a bench utility and less than 5% chance he's an average regular. I just don't see that kind of upside given his size.
I mean, the question in his chat is he the second best outfielder, in the system behind Cole Brannon? And Alex said no. I mean, I would take Danny Mars over Cedrola.
I would take Zue Lin.
I would take, as an outfielder, sure, yeah. True, yeah, Zue Lin.
I would take Nery Tavares over him. I would take
Barfield.
Tyler Hill's close just because Tyler Hill has the same problem. He puts up really good. He had decent stats this year, but he's a left field only guy. Mm-hmm. He's in that range with for me in the 30 to 35 range with guys like Hill, Danny Mars. They're all pretty similar. I think Mars is kind of similar to him in the sense that they have that same one each. They each have their warts, whereas Cedrola, as we said, the bat, Mars is the defense, which we talked about earlier. So I just don't see any way he's a top 10 prospect, even in a down system.
No. I have a tough time with him in the top 20. Honestly, if you're really high on him and you want to put him in the 20 to 30 range, fine.
Oh, and we missed Bryce Brentz is the number 2 outfield prospect in the system somehow still as a 29-year-old.
True.
That's the one we missed.
That's true.
But yeah, no, and I think Alex said that he didn't have him in his top 30.
No,
right?
he had, well, we see him in the handbook, season-ending surgery that pulled him off the list given how important his legs are to his value. And then is Sereno, other than Brannon, is he the top outfielder in the system? Is he a top 25 in the system player? No and no.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, everyone, and again, I mean, it's with the system, you can make your own, determinations. That's what these lists are about. People are going to differ on things, but yeah, that was just a tough one for me.
Sure.
One that
I and there are some guys who are right now are probably below him, but I think guys like a Tyler Esplin, I could see passing him.
They've got guys with more upside. All of the Latin Americans, they're not outfielders, obviously, but that whole true crew of the guys they signed last year, like Flores and then the Suarez, Espinal, Lozada crew.
Well, those are all infielders, but
no, that's what I said. They're not outfielders, but Anyway, we should probably move on from Lorenzo Cedrola talk.
We should. I mean, any other thoughts on those lists, Ian? I mean, just to wrap up, there's really not a whole lot to say where we agree or disagree. I mean, I think if you look at them next to each other, there's a consensus that Cole Brannon's near the top of that group. There's a consensus that Alex Scherff is near the top of that group. So a couple of like we knew, the kind of top picks outside of Houck last year are clearly top 10 guys in the system. Shawarin is also a top 10 guy after his season. Ockamy, not a consensus top 10 guy, although it wouldn't surprise me if Alex had him at 11, and had he not ranked Marco Hernandez, he's maybe at 10. And then Travis is a consensus top 10 guy. Beeks is kind of hanging on the fringe there, whereas you have the 2 surprise guys from the other lists as well. I think you're seeing some stratification, but yeah, it's no agreement whatsoever on ranking those guys in terms of rankings.
No, the order is different, but the names are similar. And as we said, other than Cedrola for what we discussed and Hernandez, which is also what we discussed, I mean, it seems like everyone's in pretty much lockstep about who the names are. It's just more of a personal preference thing, which is, again, the subjectivity of rankings. Our rankings are based on the three of us discussing things, and then obviously outside opinions from various industry personnel and everything, and seeing the guys. And that's how we come to our list, and they have a different process, and, it's defensible. It just depends. Yeah.
One quick thing I should probably mention, or a couple of news pieces we didn't hit on, Ian. The rookie development program is back.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So the Red Sox, for a few years, had a rookie development program in which players who were close to the majors came to Boston for a week in January to, you looking at the press releases, focuses on easing their transition into becoming major league players with the Red Sox, includes 2 workouts daily, emphasizing strength and conditioning as well as concentration on fundamentals. In addition, they have some seminars that focus on assimilation in major league life on and off the field. So this includes things like dealing with media, dealing with the major league lifestyle, things like that. Like I know they've had Doc Rivers has come to talk to the players in past years when he was the coach of the Celtics. I think Brad Stevens might have come this year, actually, now that I'm trying to think of what I've seen in the media. And they also do some charity work. Like they visited the Children's Hospital while they were in town this past week. And the players that were invited this year were Michael Chavis, Josh Ockamy, Chad De La Guerra, Esteban Quiroz, Jalen Beeks, Williams Jerez, Bobby Pointer, Ty Buttry, Justin Haley, and Mike Shawarin. Shawarin probably the only really surprise on that list, given that he hasn't even pitched in Double-A yet. But, he's a guy that it looks like they think he could move quickly, especially if you figure if he moves into a bullpen role or something, who could help really soon. They didn't actually have a program last year because basically there weren't any guys who hadn't done the program before who were major league ready. Thanks, Dave. But even if you look this year at the list of guys, it's relief pitchers and a couple of potential bench infielders, plus Chavis and Ockamy. If I sound distracted, I'm sorry. The cat is sprinting in and out of the room. But, yeah, I mean, it's good that they've got that back. That's a good sign, I think. So that's a good thing. Also, we didn't talk about the Red Sox announced the coaching staffs in the minor leagues. Nothing really super surprising. Manager-wise, Kevin Bowles stays at Pawtucket. Darren Fenster moves up from Greenville to Portland. Not surprised there. They really like him. He's had a good run of 4 years in Greenville. Joe Oliver still in Salem. Iggy Suarez moves up from Lowell to Greenville. Those are the full season staffs. The pitching coaches just kind of got shuffled around. Kevin Walker up to Pawtucket from Portland. Paul Abbott up from Salem to Portland. Lance Carter up from Lowell to Salem. Bob Kipper down from Pawtucket to Greenville, which makes sense. I mean, this is his third stint in Greenville. It's not really a demotion. They just kind of shuffle guys around like that. The Nelson Paulino, who was he stays in not Nelson Paulino. What's his face? The former pitching coach for Greenville. Why can I not think of him?
Paul Abbott? Or no, Nelson.
Nelson Paulino?
No. Miranda. Walter Miranda.
Walter Miranda, thank you. He's their new Latin American pitching coordinator. So he's not the pitching coach of the DSL team, but he's the pitching coordinator who basically, I think the role is basically he bounces around between the Gulf Coast League and Dominican Summer League and works with those pitchers. So he's kind of a roving pitching instructor in the lower minors. Hitting coaches basically stayed about the same. Rich Gedman is still in Pawtucket. Lee May is still in Portland. Nelson Paulino is still in Salem. In Greenville, Wilton Veras stays there. The Lowell staff, who I haven't talked about, is 3 players who, it's interesting to me, started in the system as coaching assistants. Corey Wimberly is going to be the new manager. He was on the Greenville coaching staff last spring. Nick Green is going to be the pitching coach there. He was a assistant coach with their organization for the last 3 years. Nate Spears is going to return to Lowell as the hitting coach after spending 2016 as a coaching assistant. So it's interesting. They kind of added that coaching assistant role, and it's starting to pay dividends. You're going to see them, I think, focus more on developing coaches, which I think is very, very smart. We saw Carlos Febles move up from Portland to the Major League staff this year. So they hired Tony La Russa, who will be kind of a resource for Alex Cora, and as well will work with the coaches in the minor league system. I think that's smart. I think that's finding an area where maybe other organizations aren't doing such work. These are guys that can be worked into your major league coaching staff instead of having to, do some kind of search for guys in the offseason. If you have guys who leave, say, assistant coaches who become managers, or if a manager leaves, or things like that. If you need an assistant coach, if you need a bench coach, a bullpen coach, that kind of thing. Gulf Coast League, Tom Kochman is back as the manager there. Angel Baroa continues as the hitting coach. Angel Baroa continues. He's basically an assistant coach. Dick Such is going to be the pitching coach for his 6th season. Junior Zamora is back as the hitting coach. In the DSL, the Red Sox are officially going back to 2 teams. Not surprising. Jose Zapata returns as the Latin American field coordinator. Fernando Tatis is really the only kind of headlining new person on the staff down there. He's going to manage one of the 2 DSL teams, while Ali Gonzalez will manage the other DSL team. And there's a whole bunch of coaches down there that aren't worth going into, really. So that's everything. Ian,
that was impressive.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I was looking at the press release as I went into all that nonsense. One last thing. The Red Sox extended their player development contracts with the currently in Pawtucket Red Sox, and I think they also extended their player development contract with Greenville. So those both extended for 2 years. Absolutely no surprise there. So glad to see those 2 teams staying around. We maybe should get someone in here sometime soon to talk about the whole Pawtucket stadium drama. Rumors they might move to Worcester, but the Rhode Island legislature just passed the stadium deal for Pawtucket. It's not the one that the Paw Sox had negotiated, so we'll see how that plays out. But at any rate, some positive progress for the folks in Rhode Island there. Ian, before we head out, anything to add?
Nope, I think that's it. We've gone much longer than I think we anticipated.
Yeah,
but
I think we did.
You guys deserve it. We've disappeared for a while. We've been very busy. So
we appreciate you guys staying with us.
Hang and win. And obviously, as the season is starting to get closer, we should be hopefully ramping things up again.
Yeah, we will. We have plans for our spring training trip. I hope I could go.
Yeah.
It's dicey. Depends on indictment decisions, basically. So we'll see. Hopefully I can go, but I know at least you guys will be there, so we'll do some podcasts around that time. We'll do some more coming up. We didn't really talk much about Winter League stuff. There's some interesting stuff happening there. There's some interesting stuff happening, hopefully, in transactions. One would hope soon, please.
Something will happen.
Just go sign JD Martinez. Gosh.
All right. I think that's how we should end it.
Yes. All right. For Ian, I'm Chris. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.